Hey everyone, this is going to be a review of Shadowhunters Season 3, Episode 13, Beati, Bellicosi, and I'm probably saying that wrong. And also, it's very hot in my apartment right now. It's above 80 degrees Fahrenheit in here, so I have the fan on and the window open, and I'm really sorry if it's noisy, but it's necessary right now. This episode opens with the Praetor Lupus, including Jordan, going after Heidi, and she winds up killing one of the wolves who happens to be Jordan's close friend, and she has a line in this scene about it not being her fault that bad things keep happening to her. And I feel like Heidi is a very frustrating character. Like, she's very, very annoying. This is like the 4th or 5th time I've watched this episode, and I feel like my feelings on Heidi have kind of shifted, except also not shifted at the same time, because she's a very frustrating character, because I feel like throughout all of her appearances on the show, there's this very big sense that, like, she very much views herself as like a victim and like bad things have happened to her, and we get hints that bad things have happened to her. Like, I can't remember the exact details, but like her family was not great, and that seems very obvious and everything like that, and she doesn't seem to have had friends in school. We get a glimpse of an old classmate here who's really rude to her and things like that, but like, I feel like my main frustration comes from the story giving us these hints that Heidi really did go through some bad things, but then it doesn't really match. Like, other ways she behaves makes it sound like she's exaggerating a lot, or making, like, you know, like, some of the times the way she acts makes it seem like she's overreacting, or as if she thinks that bad things happen to her, but she's making a big deal out of nothing. But then some of the things she does reference can be like things that are actually difficult to go through, and it seems like this weird, like, they don't really fit together. Like, on one level I feel like she actually did struggle with certain things, and then on the other hand she just seems like a spoiled girl who never actually had problems but thinks she did, and it doesn't. Sometimes I wonder like where she's actually supposed to be in that like spectrum of things. So I don't know, I guess I kind of wish Heidi had more characterization, or like deeper characterization. The way she's portrayed in this show is just very annoying. She's a very annoying character, and I feel like she could have been more than that. Izzy wakes up in Simon's apartment in this episode, and that scene is so cute. I mentioned in my last video that I am a Sizzy shipper. I've been a Sizzy shipper from the books, and like, seeing their relationship finally progress on the show is very exciting for me, and just it was a cute scene, like Simon being worried and everything. I really loved that scene. It was a nice scene. With everything going on, the first time I watched this episode, the first several times I watched this episode actually, I don't think I really thought about this, but thinking about it now, Simon and Izzy's reactions to finding out Clary's actually alive are kind of muted. They thought Clary was dead. Like, they're both close with her, they're both good friends with her, Simon's been best friends with her forever, and they're happy when she's alive, of course. But I feel like I'm trying to think about how I would react if I thought my best friend was dead and then suddenly found out they were alive. That's a situation that's very hard to imagine, but at the same time, I feel like that would be a situation where I would expect more emotion, like not just happiness, but maybe like crying, tears, like tears of surprise, being in shock. I don't know. watching it this time, I just felt that their reaction was a little, like, muted, I guess. There's also a scene between Izzy and Magnus where Izzy admits that she let Simon feed off of her, and she asks Magnus for help getting this, like, root that will help her. And the scene between them was really sweet. I love seeing Magnus becoming more enmeshed in Alec's life. We get some tension between Maya and, I forgot the current alpha's name. But we get tension between him and Maya. Maya doesn't agree with how he's running the pack. Russell. His name is Russell. So Maya doesn't agree with how Russell is running the pack. Anything that gets us closer to Maya being the pack leader makes me very excited. This episode is the first time we hear about the marks on Clary and Jonathan being marks that were also on Michael and Lucifer, and having that whole legend. I believe that is something that isn't in the books and that the show did itself. I do find it interesting though that Lilith is the one who put these marks on Clary and Jonathan, and in this episode there's no clear explanation for why Michael and Lucifer would be bound that way. And because Clary and Jonathan have the marks in order to bring Jonathan back to life, but then that begs the question of why Michael and Lucifer needed them. Heidi manipulating the vampires and werewolves is very frustrating to watch. It's one of those things where you're watching the episode and you really want to intervene because it's so frustrating watching them just like not understand what's going on, and I hate it so much. Simon and Maya have probably like the most amicable breakup ever in this episode, and I absolutely love that, and I love that they end it on good terms and they still like each other. Even though I am a Sizzy shipper, I do feel like I appreciate Saya more in the TV show than in the books. I do like Simon, Maya, and Izzy's characters, all three, in both the books and the TV show. And I was never like against Simon and Maya being together in the books. But in the books I was more strongly in Simon needs to be with Izzy. Even though I like Maya and Simon as characters, in the book I was never as convinced by their romantic relationship, I think. I think a lot of that has to do with it just being more developed in the show than it was in the books. In the books, as far as I remember, we see less of them together as a couple, so I think that's a lot of it. So I am glad that they were able to end things on such a positive note, even though I am very excited for Sizzy. Greenlaw, the Shadowhunter that agreed to meet with Izzy, winds up murdered, and he says heavenly fire in Latin and also inside before he dies. The heavenly fire is in the books, but in a very different way than in the TV show. Like, knowing what the TV show does from this point forward, the direction they take the heavenly fire in is very different from the direction of the books. So we learn from Maris in this episode that there's a secret clave program called Heavenly Fire. And this is one of those situations where I can't exactly remember what I thought about this the first time I watched the episode, but because this is very different from the books, Because in the books, I don't think this is too big of a spoiler if you haven't read the books, because in the books there's no secret clave program called Heavenly Fire. That does make things interesting from, like, if you're watching the show and you've read the books, you're still like, what's going on here? Because you have no idea. But of course, I'll talk more about that as I keep talking about the episodes and get to the parts where the characters learn more about that program. The episode ends with the New York vampire clan, because of Heidi manipulating them, attacking the werewolf pack and basically killing everyone except Maya and Jordan, who are trapped in the storeroom, and Jordan is dying, which is obviously a very intense way to end the episode. This is also not something that happens in the books, so it was very surprising for me, and also again very frustrating because Heidi, just everything surrounding Heidi frustrates me, and this was no different. But because it kind of ends on a cliffhanger and we don't know what happens with Jordan and Maya at the end of this episode, I'll talk about that next time when I talk about the next episode. So I think that is everything, and I will see you guys later. Bye.